Hello and welcome to the FRAG channel. Today I'm going to do a video solo on Higurashi. So recently I started getting into the Higurashi series and I've been really hooked on it. Especially what's hooked me is the mystery behind everything that's happened throughout the visual novels, basically. For this video, I'm going to talk about specifically all of the question arcs, so the 4 question arcs, and also at the end, I'm going to talk about Meakashi as well. That's the first of the answer arcs, the 5th chapter. So, I really like these novels because of the mystery, especially as well. In the first arc, what the hell happened at the end when he starts, where Rena and Mion just turn into, these tsunderes basically. Trying to get him with a needle. And Rena's acting really weird, and then he's got the needle that's in the food that he eats as well. It's insane. And at the end, when he ends up killing them, and he runs to the phone booth to call Oishi, and he ends up clawing at his own throat and he dies. So that mystery is like really crazy, especially when we get to the second chapter as well, with like, well, what the hell happened? So Mion's behind everything supposedly, but then at the end when Mion's dead, but she's got up and she's walked around and she's killed you. Well, she stabbed you at night when she shouldn't be alive. So, and then even further with Higurashi, the 3rd chapter, with the uncle for Satoko's coming by and shit happening there. And then at the end as well, when everyone ends up dying, and then the whole village ends up dying because of the gas that comes out of the swamp. It's just it's so crazy, and that's really what's gotten me into everything. So that's really what piqued my interest with the series. So I've recently got through it. As of this video, I am at the 6th chapter. That's Sumi Horoboshi. And I am close to finishing that one. But we're only going to talk about everything up to the Meakashi arc, which is the 5th chapter. And I'm planning on making a video for each one of the answer arcs as we go through as well. Okay. So the first 4 arcs. How about we start by how I'd rate these arcs? So the one that I like the least is the 4th one, which is kind of more of a side story, which is explainable. And then, so that one I like the least. So that would be ranked 4th out of the question arcs themselves. And then I kind of like the first one. The first one comes next. That's ranked 3rd. And I really like the 2nd and 3rd one. I'm not sure if I can put any of them over the other. I kind of like them individually a lot. So it's hard for me to rank them. Maybe they're just tied for the top. So let's go through the answer arcs to start for this video. So with the answer arcs, the question, I'm an idiot. The question arcs. If we're going through the question, let's start and go through the question arcs first. So chapters 1 to 4. So with the first chapter, it really got that mystery. You didn't really get a whole lot of backstory about like the village and everything that happened, which sucked. But it was by the time I got to the 2nd chapter, which is the Watanagashi chapter, I believe, which is when I really started to get hooked. You started to actually learn something about the Sonozaki family itself. You start to learn, because apparently you didn't know this in the first chapter, but the Sonozaki family is actually really, really powerful and influential across the prefecture. Not even just the village. So you start to learn that stuff, and you learn a bit more backstory. You learn that Mion has a twin sister called Shion as well. You start to learn so many more things, and it presents you with this new plot, and you believe that Mion is behind everything, but as we'll know later, that's not really true. and then she's the one that conducted all the killings at that time as well. And then there's all that weird stuff that happens at the end that I talked about as well. How Mion's dead, but then she comes back. So that one was that, that one sparked my sense of mystery and wonder a lot more, and trying to figure out exactly what's happening. And then the third arc, which this is the one that gave me a bit of a which got me to say maybe I should just sit back and just enjoy the story rather than figure out what's happening, because there's so many contradictions that's happening here. It's just insane. So by the time we get to the third chapter, which is Tatarigurashi, and that's the one which mainly focuses around Satoko, and when her uncle comes back and he's an arsehole. But you end up killing him, and then the next day you realize that he's not actually dead, and it's like, what the fuck just happened? So he isn't dead, but you killed him, and you experienced it yourself. You're trying to figure out, am I just going crazy, or what's happening? You realize that the bat that he uses to kill him is gone from the place where he took it from. So like, okay, maybe I am right, but why is he still here? And then you go further into it, you start discovering things, and you end up going back to the grave where you buried the uncle that you killed, and you realize that, oh my gosh, his body is not here. This was also the arc where Oishi was a fucking asshole. Oishi, the detective, he is a fucking asshole, dude, man. He's such an asshole. It's hard for me to like him after going through this arc with him like when he first meets you, he squeezes your shoulder, and then he kicks dirt in your face when you're digging up the body to figure out if it's there, but it's not there. Oishi was an asshole. But yeah, you figure out the body's not there, and you're like, well, what the hell is happening? Obviously, something was buried there, because we even know, because they tell that the soil that they're digging from is like loose to indicate that someone has actually like dug here before. So like, obviously someone's dug here, but the body's not here. So what's happening exactly? So you don't know any of this, and so you start to have these contradictions. Well, we played through the eyes of Keiichi, and we've seen that he's actually killed this guy. He's killed Satoko's uncle, but he's not in the place where we buried him. We went through the entire scenario. We were waiting to ambush him when he came to the woods. We knocked him off his bike. We chased him through the forest. We ended up beating his fucking head in, and we beat him to death, and then we buried him, and like we lived through all of that. And then also the weird shit with what was her name? The weird girl that comes up with the weird theories. Takano-san. Yeah. So yeah, that stuff as well. But it was specifically this chapter, the third chapter, which really got me to think, does it even I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like, is my character telling the truth? Is everyone else in the world telling the truth? What's real and what's not? Because we've done something, and something else has happened that shouldn't be the case, right? We killed someone, but he's not there. He's not dead, and he's still alive apparently. Because the next day he's done shit with fucking Satoko. It's just insane. So it was at that point where I started to think, you know what? This story is really weird. I don't think there's any way that I could be an ultimate detective and figure out what's happening in this village and what exactly happened in this 5th year. That I can't explain it, right? Because I can't tell what's truth from what's lie anymore, because there's so many contradictions. So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to think too much about it. I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy playing through the Higurashi visual novels. And so that's practically what I did, but I still like to debate over what happened, but not as much, because what's truth and what's lie at this point. So that chapter kind of got me to sit back and not really think too much about it, because at this point I just thought, you know what, there's so many weird contradictions here. Anything can be explained in any weird way that you want it to be explained. Maybe everyone's just high in the village and it's all just some weird trip or some dream or whatever, if you want to take it that far. But you can also explain in some other weird, like convoluted and convenient ways as well, everything that's happened with the deaths and the village and what specifically happened in the 5th year. because the routes as well. The first route is different from the second route, from the third route. And when I'm talking about routes, I'm talking about the chapters themselves and specifically what happens in those chapters. They're just different. The uncle that shows up in the third route doesn't show up in the second route, and vice versa. There's different things that happen in each route. So, oh boy. So practically that's what I've been thinking when I've gotten up to the third arc. Then we finally get to the fourth chapter, or the fourth arc. I'll be referring to them as like arcs, routes. The fourth chapter, which is like a side story from what I'm told, which takes us back all the way back before any of the string of deaths happened, and it's a prequel. We follow Akasaka and through the protests. So I really like that we finally got to go back to experience what happened before in the village, because I was starting to think, well, we know a lot about what happens in the fifth year, and especially with how different it is every time in the fifth year, but we don't. But something that seems consistent is what happened up till then. So maybe if we learn something about what happened in those earlier years, or what happened in the past, we can get to explain what's happening better. The most that the fourth chapter really gave us is like information on Rika specifically, and just how weird she is. So she has this weird kind of like different side to her that she turns into.
Akasaka. 東京へ帰れ。あなたはさっさと東京に帰った方がいい。でないとひどく後悔することになる。
後悔？
警告はした。あとはあなた次第。
And she apparently can foretell everything that's going to happen in the future as well. She has this ability to prophesize or foretell what's going to happen. She knows that the first death is going to happen, the second, third, fourth, and she knows that she's going to die as well on the fifth year. So she can tell these things. So you know that there's something really weird and mystical happening. My favorite part by far in that chapter was when Rika ends up telling with her smug little face Akasaka that he's a coward. She's like, Akasaka's a coward. I thought that was just really funny. This detective from Tokyo who's come down here to investigate things about the minister's grandson's disappearance. So I thought that was good. Anyway, that's pretty much my little quick rundown of everything to do with the question arc specifically, and how I don't think it's worth racking your brain to figure out what happened, because you can't tell truth from lie. We don't have it doesn't seem like we have all the information. So now let's talk about Meakashi, the first answer arc chapter. Okay, so the first answer arc chapter, Meakashi, takes us through, actually, it explains what happened in the second arc of the question arcs, which is, we learn that Shion was actually Mion, and she did all this crazy shit. She killed like so many people in the village, and yeah, so she was basically the mastermind behind everything that happened in the Watanagashi chapter. So that was pretty crazy. But now let's go through some theories and things. So the story, so as I thought it would be with the question arcs, the story in Meakashi explained what happened in the second arc, but the story was explained in this convoluted and convenient kind of like fashion, right? Shion was Mion, and everything seemed to fit together to make it the perfect kind of like lie and the perfect scenario for her to commit these murders. And I'm like, okay, well, I would, when I was going through Watanagashi, I did find out that like Mion and Shion were like saying some really weird things. I thought that they did switch bodies at some point. I kind of did figure that out in Watanagashi, but I wouldn't have figured out that all this other shit happened. That like, without knowing what I knew what I know in Meakashi, I wouldn't have known, because Meakashi takes you through like Shion's backstory, and it even takes you through the 4th year, which is interesting because, like I said, the 5th year seems to change so much, but the other years don't change as much. So it feels like you can get more answers if you go back and you figure out what happened in the other years. But we don't even know what happens. We can't even figure out what happens being around the 4th year. So Satoshi apparently kills his aunt. We're made to believe that's what a lot of the characters speculate. And then he ends up disappearing, and Shion really likes him, so she goes crazy, and all that shit happens. In Watanagashi, they explain that when Kaichi's getting before he's going to get tortured, Shion is explaining to him, all of this started because you didn't give me on the dough. And I just thought that was kind of stupid. But, after going through Meikashi and experiencing that story, you can kind of, okay, it makes a little bit more sense. Shion could be jealous and, all that stuff. It makes a little bit more sense why that's caused everything in the scene of events to happen. So I thought it was really strange how Shion turns into like a 200 IQ mastermind, setting up the perfect lies in the Meikashi arc. But also how it's just so convenient that some other parts of the story line up to make everything, answer everything, basically, in the second arc. So, for instance, the convenient part with how Shion, when she goes crazy and she starts like killing people in the village, how she runs into Rika and Satoko. So she doesn't plan on actually seeing Rika, but she ends up seeing Rika because she comes to her house for sauce. Because apparently, the Sonozaki family put out a flyer saying that, come to our house and get sauce. We can give it to you. So she comes to the house, but then Rika attacks her, tries to hit her with some syringe. I don't know what's up with that, and so she ends up killing Rika at the end. Anyway, Rika kills herself. So again, Rika's really weird. She has this different like personality or whatever. But Rika's dead, and Shion's this fucking 200 IQ mastermind. She's tricked the whole village into not thinking that anything's wrong when she's living in Mion's house, and nothing's wrong apparently. Right? She's managed to trick the whole village. Everything's going fine, but she fails to realize that Rika and Satoko live together, and Satoko could figure out everything that's happening. Because Rika's gone missing now because she killed her. So Satoko calls the house. She answers the phone, and Shion says, you're looking for Rika. That's right, you two live together. I just realized that now. 200 IQ mastermind realized that now. And then she realizes as well that, shit, I need to get rid of Satoko now. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of suspicion happening. So she says, Rika and I are eating at the moment. Why don't you come over? Right? Well, she's already come over and she's started to eat. Like, you just come over and just chill out with us so I can kill you. Which sounds a bit suspicious to me. Rika in the first place comes out because she needs to get sauce because of something that Satoko's doing at home and she's cooking. But now Rika, when she comes to Mion's house and she starts eating there, she doesn't decide to tell Satoko. That seems like so weird. Why would she be suspicious? But whatever. She tells her to come over. Satoko, not knowing, not suspecting anything, just comes over and she ends up abducting her for a very iconic scene later. So I'm not really sure what to think about the big mystery behind the deaths in Hanamizawa, where at the end of Meikashi we're made to believe that the three families, or at least the Sonozaki family, wasn't responsible for any of the deaths or the curses that were happening each year, because Mion apparently tells us this. But I'm not sure at this point whether to believe it, similarly as how I'm not sure whether to believe other things in the game that I've been told by this point. You know, there's so many weird contradictions. I don't know who's lying. I don't know who's telling the truth. I don't know if it's true, right? I think there's some truth to what Mion's saying, but I also think maybe it's like 50. Maybe there's some truth to it, but maybe there's also a lie to it as well. I think they might be involved in some of them. Like, say maybe they're involved in the first string of deaths that happen, and the second one, but like maybe not the fourth one or the thingy one, something like that. And the reason I think this is because at the end of the chapter itself, we get some information. So we find bones of several years old and some of several decades old that are down in the well or whatever that they where they put the bodies when they kill them in that little underground bunker where they torture people. So if there's bones from something that's several years old, this has been going on for like 5 years now, right? So, you know, maybe they actually killed one of those other ones, and then there's one from several decades old, and there's this mention of like things about the Meiji era and something that happened there. Maybe that's from then, you know, that they've put in there, or something like that. So it definitely, when we find other bones in there, it heightens my suspicions, basically. Even though it doesn't seem like Mion's lying, but then again, I don't know what to believe. There's so many weird contradictions, and I'm just there for the ride. I'll speculate a little bit, but I'm there for the ride because, as we've seen with this chapter, everything is explained in some weird, convoluted, convenient mess, right? And it's like, okay, Shion was Mion, and Rika came over. Satoka didn't suspect anything. You know, all these very convenient things happening together. She manages to trick the whole village into not suspecting anything as well. It's crazy. It's crazy the shit that she does, honestly. But I can have a suspension of disbelief here because I still think it's a good chapter anyway, and it's fine, like, even without it. Anyway. Sadly, we don't know the backstory or any other close revelations for any of the other deaths apart from the 4th and the 5th years. And that's especially sad because, you know, this 200 IQ Shion, which manages to trick the whole village, also doesn't seem to want to question any of the people that she's torturing about any of the other years. And you think that'll be a good question to ask because those definitely might be relevant to figuring out what's happening if she knows what happened on the 3rd and the 4th, but she doesn't ask the mayor about it. She doesn't really ask Mion about it. And that's kind of what really gets me there. But you know, I can also understand it in another way. She seems like to be very tunnel visioned for like figuring out especially what happened with Satoshi. But I figure if you're that smart, you could also figure out what happened in the other years. Might explain that as well. But she does. Apparently, she didn't think that far. She just got Satoshi in her brain like 24/7 that she can't even. Yeah. So that's what happened. Yeah, so I also think it was a bit of a loss that she didn't really question anyone about the other deaths that happened and the other years. But apparently we were meant to believe at the end that they didn't have any involvement. What's the deal with the bones in there as well? They might be lying. I can't believe anyone. Yeah, the bones down in the well. What, you know? Yeah, it's just crazy. So here's the other part. So there are so many things that are unclear. So we're made to believe that Mion and the grandma doesn't have anything to do with the string of deaths. But how do you explain the first scenario? In the first scenario, Rena and Mion like turn into tsunderes, and you know they act so weird. And Mion pulls out a syringe, the same syringe that Rika had, and you know, so it's like, how do you explain that? So are you saying that she really doesn't know anything about any of the goings on that is happening? That seems so weird. That's what kind of gets me to like adds to my like non-belief of like not being able to believe anything that's happening, right? Because that first chapter is like that. By far, once we've got to the 5th chapter and we finish the 5th chapter, the first chapter is by far the one that is just the weirdest to me, because it's so hard to explain everything that happened in there. Like, why do those characters act so weird in that chapter, but I don't act the same way in the other ones? Especially with things like, why does the uncle show up in the 3rd chapter but not the other ones, and everything changes each route or like chapter. That's just so weird to me. But yeah, so basically there's a ton of shit that I just find really weird and hard to explain. So those are just some examples, but yeah. There's, by this point, there's something weird happening with Rika. She seems to be able to foretell everything that's happening in the future. She has some like weird second personality. There's definitely something like otherworldly or supernatural there, I'm led to believe. So I'm not even gonna bother to try and like speculate about that, because as I know, anything could be lies, and once everything can be explained in some weird, convenient, convoluted way, which is kind of like what they did with the Meakashi arc, but it's fine. I still enjoyed it. So that leads me to believe the first chapter. So the first chapter, I wouldn't be surprised if it was also explained in some weird, convoluted way. So the second one was explained in some weird, convoluted way. Shion is Mion, Shion's 200 IQ, crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something similar with the first question arc, the Onikakushi arc. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did some weird stuff to explain that one. But let me talk about some of the good things that I really liked about this chapter, because I actually really, really liked the 5th chapter. So the Satoko torture scene. When Satoko is taken in by Shion, and Shion really has a grudge against Satoko because she thinks that it's because of her not being as strong and independent that Satoshi had to suffer as much as he did, and maybe if she was, he wouldn't have had to kill the aunt, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten spirited demoned away, or whatever happened to him. We still don't know. And then she starts torturing her. But Satoko ends up, while Shion's saying, Nini's not going to help you, nothing's going to happen, it was your fault that he's done this. And then, Satoko has this real, like, big change in character. She says, yeah, I kind of blame myself too for everything that's happened. Satoko says, I feel like I should have been stronger as well. And then she says, so I will be stronger for Nini, for whenever he comes back. She really believes that Satoshi is going to come back, and she wants to be prepared for when he comes back. So despite how much torture that Shion puts Satoko through, she doesn't. She holds in her screams. She bites her lip. She doesn't want to. She wants to be strong. She wants to show that she's strong and that she could take it.
泣いたら今までと一緒だから、私は耐えてみせるんですのよ。上等抜かすな、小娘が。私を刺して楽しいならいくらでもお楽しみ遊ばせ。でもね、私は泣かないんだから、絶対見てますわね。サトコはこんなに強くなったんですのよ。もう何が起きてもへこたれませんの。こんな程度で、こんなくらいでは私は泣かない。
And it's so sad, dude. As she's just sitting there, like, Nini, look at me. Aren't you proud now? Look at me. I'm so independent. And then she starts having these delusions, like she's finally being reunited with Nini as she's about to die. And then they're happy together as well. It was a very emotional, very touching scene. I usually don't cry with like things, but I could feel the tears welling up behind my eyes. It was very touching, and especially at the closer to the end of the Meakashi arc when Shion ends up. So she does all those things. She stabs Keiichi. She comes back to her house, but then she falls over and hits her head, and so she's basically dead. She's about to die. But it's when she dies that she kind of snaps out of this really crazed state, and she starts to realize, oh, look at all the horrible things I did, and why didn't I just believe in Satoshi a bit more, and why didn't I listen to Satoshi as well? And she has this imagination, like, I guess, right at the end, you know, and yeah, she wishes everything could have been better, but then she dies, right? She dies with all these regrets about how she's dealt with everything, and how much pain she's caused everyone, and that she wishes maybe she wasn't born, so no one would have to suffer because of how she's been, right? And then at the end, at the end of the actual chapter, we get this dream or this imagination that Shion has, where things are different, right? She listened to Satoshi once he disappeared, and she when he told her to look after Satoko, and she's actually getting along with Satoko, and she's there with Satoko and Rika and Mion and Keiichi, and she's hanging out with them, and she's looking after Satoko and, you know, taking care of her, and, you know, they're playing around with each other, they're joking around and all that. You know, it really gets you, you know, because of like how things could have been, and how much better it was than how things actually ended up turning out in this arc. I thought it was really impactful emotionally, and I really liked it for that. I think the 5th arc, Meakashi, by far, really hits deep and is really good for hitting that emotional storytelling. I really liked it. I really liked it a lot. And, you know, despite some of my gripes and my criticisms that I'd have with, you know, how Shion really, like, tricks the entire village and turns into, like, 200 IQ, but there's also very convenient things that end up working out for her. I think it was still a really good arc. You know, I can have a suspension of disbelief for a lot of things that happened. So, like, you know, it's still within the realm of possibility. You know, it's all, you know, just the way it was told and how it hits you emotionally, with just, it felt like a very personal story with Shion as well, and I think that's kind of where that big impact comes from, especially at the end, when she has that delusion, that daydream about things being different. Yeah, that was really, really touching. I really liked it. Anyway, that's, yeah, so Meakashi, probably my favorite arc to this point. Anyway, that's basically my experience, and basically what I thought about the Higurashi series up till Meakashi. You know, I hope you guys, if you were watching, I hope you guys enjoyed following along and listening to what I have to say as well. So yeah, I do really look forward to finishing the rest of the chapters as well. The plan is so that I can make another video, so I'll make individual videos for each answer arc as I go through. So for this first video, I've gone through all of the question arcs, and I've also touched on the first answer arc. Once I finish the second answer arc, which is Sumi Horoboshi, I'm going to make a separate video for that as well, after everything that gets explained and everything that happens in that one. And we you know, if you're going through the series as well with me, we can kind of just talk about it and everything that's happened with it. But that's been this video for now. If you liked it, yeah, you can leave a like. If you disliked it, feel free to leave a dislike as well. We're open to criticism and any anything you have to say regarding the video as well, feel free to leave a comment and I can read through that. Anyway, that was this video. So if we'll be coming out with the second video for Sumi Horoboroshi. I'm butchering these. I'm butchering these names so bad. I'm sorry. I'm not Japanese. I don't know how to pronounce these things. But chapter 6, we'll be making a video on that. So look forward to that if you did enjoy this one. But that's been me for today, my solo video. So I can see you guys in the next one. Later.